She promised to revolutionize medicine. Instead, she built a $9 billion lie. A Stanford dropout who convinced some of the most powerful people in America that a single drop of blood could run hundreds of medical tests. The youngest female billionaire in the world. Until everything came crashing down. Welcome back to Arthur Lee's Adventures. I'm Arthur Lee, and today we're conducting a corporate autopsy. The patient? Theranos, a company that went from $9 billion to zero in less than 3 years. Over the next 14 minutes, we'll examine 10 critical moments that transformed Elizabeth Holmes from Silicon Valley superstar to federal prisoner. After 35 years watching companies rise and fall, I thought nothing could surprise me about corporate fraud. I was wrong. If you're fascinated by how empires crumble, subscribe and join me every week as we uncover the stories behind the headlines. Remember, this video is for educational purposes only. It's not financial advice. Always do your own research and consult professionals before making any investment decisions. Fact number 10. In 2003, 19-year-old Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford University with a revolutionary idea. She would create technology that could run hundreds of blood tests from a single drop of blood. No more painful needle draws. No more waiting days for results. Just a quick finger prick and instant answers. Holmes founded Theranos with a simple but powerful vision. Make blood testing faster, cheaper, and painless. She claimed her technology would democratize healthcare. Bring life-saving diagnostics to everyone, everywhere. Think about that for a second. A teenager promising to revolutionize an industry worth $75 billion. The audacity was breathtaking. Her inspiration? A fear of needles and the death of a family friend from cancer that could have been caught earlier. Holmes convinced Stanford professors and early investors that she had the next big breakthrough in medical technology. The only problem? The technology didn't exist. Fact number 9. By 2013, Theranos had assembled the most prestigious board of directors in Silicon Valley history. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of Defense James Mattis, former Secretary of State George Shultz, former Wells Fargo CEO Dick Kovacevich, former Secretary of Defense William Perry. These weren't just any executives. These were titans of American politics and business. Here's what's incredible. Not one of them had medical or biotech expertise. Not one understood the science behind blood testing. But their names carried enormous weight. Investors saw these legends on the board and stopped asking hard questions. How does that happen? Simple. Elizabeth Holmes was a master of persuasion. She convinced these distinguished men that she was the next Steve Jobs, that Theranos would change the world. The prestigious board became her most powerful marketing tool and her most dangerous enabler. Fact number 8. By 2014, Theranos reached a $9 billion valuation. Elizabeth Holmes owned 50% of the company. That made her personal worth $4.5 billion. At age 30, she became the youngest female billionaire in the world. Forbes put her on the cover. Time named her one of the most influential people. The media called her the next Steve Jobs. Let that sink in for a second. A company that had never shown its technology publicly was worth more than established pharmaceutical giants. How is that possible? Theranos raised over $900 million from investors without ever publishing peer-reviewed research, without independent validation of their technology. Investors were buying into a promise, a vision. Elizabeth Holmes had convinced them that disruption was coming. That traditional blood testing was obsolete. The numbers never lie, but people sure do. And in 2014, Elizabeth Holmes was telling the biggest lie in Silicon Valley history. At this point, Theranos was the hottest startup in Silicon Valley. $9 billion, 11 years of hype. What happened next would destroy it all in months. Fact number 7. In 2013, Theranos partnered with Walgreens to offer blood testing in 40 stores across Arizona and California. This was the big breakthrough. Real customers, real tests, real revenue potential. Walgreens invested $140 million and gave Theranos access to millions of customers. The partnership promised results in hours, not days. Just walk into Walgreens, get a finger prick test, and receive your results the same day. For Walgreens, it was a chance to transform their pharmacies into healthcare destinations. For Theranos, it was validation from a major retailer. Here is where it gets interesting. The Walgreens partnership was based on demonstrations that were later revealed to be largely fraudulent. Theranos showed Walgreens executives fake test results. They rigged demonstrations to hide the fact that their Edison machines didn't work. The partnership that was supposed to prove Theranos technology actually proved how deep the deception went. Fact number 6. Under Chief Operating Officer Ramesh Balwani's leadership, Theranos implemented extreme secrecy measures that would make the CIA jealous. Badge-controlled access between departments, legal threats against employees who asked questions, surveillance of staff communications to prevent leaks. Employees worked in silos. Many had no idea what was happening in other parts of the company. Scientists couldn't collaborate. They couldn't verify each other's work. The normal peer review process that prevents disasters in medical research? It didn't exist at Theranos. Balwani, known as Sunny, created a culture where questioning the technology was considered betrayal, where asking for data was seen as disloyalty. I have sat across the table from people making exactly this kind of decision. When you build walls of secrecy this high, you're usually hiding something. At Theranos, they were hiding the fact that their revolutionary technology was a complete fraud. Fact number 5. In 2014, Theranos lab director Adam Rosendorf quit after repeatedly raising concerns about inaccurate test results being sent to patients and doctors. Rosendorf had documented cases where Theranos tests showed dangerously incorrect results. Falsely elevated HI5 levels, incorrect blood clotting measurements, results that could lead to life-threatening misdiagnoses. Think about that for a second. Patients were receiving test results that could prompt unnecessary treatments or miss critical conditions. Doctors were making medical decisions based on fraudulent data. Rosendorf warned that people could die. His concerns were dismissed. When he continued pushing for quality controls, he was forced out. This part genuinely bothers me. We're not talking about inflated revenue numbers or creative accounting. We're talking about people's lives. About trust in the most fundamental sense. We're halfway through this corporate autopsy, and honestly, the patient was already dying. But what comes next is where the real tragedy unfolds. Which of these facts has surprised you most? I'm genuinely curious. Let me know in the comments. Fact number 4. In 2014, pathologist Adam Clapper raised concerns internally about inaccurate blood test results and was fired. But unlike other employees, Clapper decided to go public. He became one of the first Theranos employees to question the technology openly. Clapper noticed that Theranos was secretly using traditional machines for most tests, not their proprietary Edison devices. The company was buying standard equipment from other manufacturers, diluting tiny blood samples and running conventional tests, then presenting the results as if they came from revolutionary Edison technology. When Clapper documented these practices and raised patient safety concerns, he was terminated immediately. Theranos accused him of stealing trade secrets, threatened him with lawsuits, tried to destroy his career. But Clapper kept talking. His courage would later inspire other whistleblowers to come forward. Sometimes one person's integrity can expose an entire house of lies. Fact number 3. On October 15, 2015, Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou published an explosive investigation that changed everything. The headline was devastating. Theranos was secretly using traditional machines for most tests, not their proprietary Edison technology. Carreyrou's investigation, based on whistleblower accounts and leaked documents, exposed the fundamental fraud at Theranos' core. The article revealed that Edison machines could only perform 12 types of tests, not the hundreds Theranos claimed. Most blood samples were processed on conventional equipment after being dangerously diluted. And that, right there, is the moment everything changed. The investigation triggered immediate scrutiny from regulators, investors, and the medical community. Theranos' stock price started plummeting. Media coverage turned from celebration to skepticism. The house of cards was collapsing, and Elizabeth Holmes knew it. Fact number 2. Following the Wall Street Journal investigation, Elizabeth Holmes embarked on a desperate media tour to save her company's reputation. She appeared on CNBC Bloomberg and at major conferences, repeatedly denying the allegations. But here's what was incredible. Holmes provided no concrete evidence to support her claims. When pressed for technical details about Edison machines, she gave vague non-answers. When asked to demonstrate the technology independently, she refused. Her defensive strategy only drew more scrutiny. Each appearance convinced more observers that the Wall Street Journal investigation was accurate. Holmes's credibility suffered further damage with every interview. She went from Silicon Valley darling to embattled CEO in a matter of weeks. You cannot make this stuff up. The media tour that was supposed to save Theranos instead accelerated its destruction. Sometimes the cover-up really is worse than the crime. But here's what makes this story truly extraordinary. The most shocking revelation is still to come. Fact number 1. In July 2016, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services banned Theranos from operating blood testing laboratories for 2 years and imposed severe sanctions. The government found immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety. Let that sink in for a second. The federal agency responsible for protecting patients determined that Theranos posed such a severe risk that they had to be shut down immediately. The CMS investigation found deficiencies so serious they threatened lives. Test results were unreliable. Quality controls were non-existent. Patient safety protocols were ignored. The ban effectively ended Theranos' core business model. You cannot run a blood testing company if you're prohibited from testing blood. The government action validated everything the Wall Street Journal had reported. It confirmed that Theranos had been endangering patients for years. Elizabeth Holmes had built a $9 billion company on a foundation of fraud. And now the federal government was saying what whistleblowers had known all along. Theranos was a danger to public health. So what happened to the key players? Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison for fraud. She reported to minimum security prison in Texas in May 2023. Ramesh Balwani received 12 years and 9 months. Both were ordered to pay hundreds of millions in restitution. The prestigious board members? Most claimed they were deceived. Henry Kissinger and George Shultz maintained they had no knowledge of the fraud until it became public. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. Many had their careers in biotech permanently damaged. Patients who received inaccurate test results filed lawsuits. Some alleged they underwent unnecessary medical procedures based on fraudulent Theranos data. Investors lost over $900 million. Walgreens terminated their partnership and later sued for damages. What can we learn from Theranos? First, prestigious boards don't guarantee honest companies. When board members lack relevant expertise, they become enablers instead of watchdogs. Second, secrecy in medical technology should be an immediate red flag. Real scientific breakthroughs are validated through peer review, not hidden behind legal threats. Third, when someone promises to revolutionize an entire industry overnight, ask for proof. Not demonstrations, not testimonials. Independent, verifiable proof. Growing up on a farm, you learn that fancy talk doesn't change what's actually in the barn. Elizabeth Holmes was all talk. The barn was empty. In my 35 years watching markets, I've seen this pattern repeatedly. The bigger the promise, the more skeptical you should be. Which moment shocked you the most? The $9 billion valuation based on fake technology? The government ban for patient safety violations? Or Elizabeth Holmes convincing some of America's most powerful people to enable fraud? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. If you want to see more corporate autopsies, subscribe and hit the bell. Next time, we're examining another Silicon Valley giant that promised to change the world but delivered disaster instead. That's another chapter of business history uncovered. The patterns are clear for those who look. Until next time, keep exploring.